Hi everyone, welcome to the Simple Art at Home Summer Camp Art Series with me, Laura Houston. Get your art supplies ready because together we will get creative, learn about art, and have some fun along the way. I'll meet you at the art table. So this is the beginner lesson titled Rainbow with Torn Paper Part 1. For Part 1, you're going to need 2 of these smaller, or what I call half sheets of white paper, and you will also need 1 full sheet of white paper. You're going to want a pencil and also some crayons, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And then optional is brown. You're actually going to have 2 different choices for this lesson. You're going to have the choice of making a torn paper rainbow or a torn paper tree. And I will show you how to do those, but they both start the same way. What I generally do is when you see me with all these papers, I usually put them on the floor next to me. So if you don't have enough space on your desk, you'll just put them on the floor behind you. And since everyone is sitting down, nothing should get stepped on. So to start, we're going to divide this paper into some sections. So we have 6 different colors, so we'll have 6 sections. Why don't I do this with a darker crayon, just so you can see it better, but you'll want to do this with a pencil because you don't really want this line to show. So you're going to draw a line across here. You can do this with your pencil. Because this section will be colored, we'll do red. And then we have an orange section. We'll do some orange in here. And then we'll have yellow. This section will be yellow. We'll have some yellow. And then we have a 4th section. What's going to be next? What color? Do you know? Green. And just draw 1 more line and it makes 2 sections. And this will be blue and then purple. Okay, we will be using watercolors. So sorry teachers, I forgot to mention that. We're gonna have watercolors, it's optional. I think it's a little more fun. We're gonna use crayons and watercolors. So I'm just gonna set these aside. So I'm going to start by using my red crayon, and I'm just drawing some patterns here. So I'm just taking my red and making some swirly lines here. Excuse me. And this does not have to be perfect because this is going to end up being torn. This will be your torn paper. So I'm just making some swirly lines, and when we paint over it, these lines will show up as a pattern. Okay, and then next I'm going to do the same thing with some orange. And how about if I do some diagonal lines like this with the orange section? You can do any pattern that you want. Anything that you think will kind of look interesting. And again, these sections will be torn up into little pieces and glued. So it's kind of just background pattern right now. Okay. And then next is yellow. And for yellow, I'm just going to do maybe some wiggly lines like this. If you're not using watercolors, you might want to fill this more in with crayon. I'm just doing some background patterns. It's just going to add a little interest. And then we have red, orange, yellow, green. And for green, I'll do, thank you. I had to get a little sip of water there. I had a tickle in my throat. I'm just going to do some circles that overlap. See that? They're just patterns that will be in the background. I'm going to show you a sample in a minute of what this will look like, more of a partially finished product, so you know what I'm talking about, because right now this could seem rather strange what we're doing. And then for blue, why don't we do some lines that are like squares and rectangles. So isn't that a pretty blue? So if I just do some lines like this. Again, don't spend too much time. This paper is going to be torn into little pieces, but the patterns will still show up. You can even do some more lines on top of it. It's fun to make patterns. And finally, we have purple. And for purple, I think I like the same swirls that I did up here for this reddish color. Swirls are easy, just have fun. They can swirl in any direction, almost like little slinkies or springs, curls. They can overlap and they're fast. It's just a fast way to make patterns. All right, so let me show you so you can understand this end product that I'm talking about. So you can see we'll be tearing these up and gluing them. This one's not finished, but it gives you an idea of how the pattern shows up. Okay, so now we're going to paint. If you don't want to paint, that's fine. You can just keep adding color with your crayons or whatever it is that you want to add color with. I've got a little cup of water here, and I'm just going to start with the red and just kind of go straight across. So I think I mentioned in the last video that we're not using true watercolor paper, so don't use too much water because the paper could end up tearing, because it kind of falls apart if you use too much water. I'm sure you've noticed that before. Notice how I'm not spending too much time on this because, as I said, it's going to get torn up, but we still want some red on our paper. Okay, now I'm switching to orange. So I'm gonna put my brush in the water and I'm gonna change to orange. I'm just kind of starting on one side and moving across here. I like using a larger paintbrush when we're painting large, wide sections like this. It's okay if the colors overlap too. This is not something that's necessarily a perfect, precise piece of art. It can be a little bit messy, and that looks good with this type of project. There, I'm almost done with the orange. Okay. And then I'm going to clean my brush really well. Whenever I use yellow, I want to make sure my brush is clean. And here comes the yellow. I'm just gonna notice how the crayon pattern shows through. It even shows through with the yellow. And it just makes an interesting design. Just adds interest to your art. And it's fun. Okay, there's my yellow. And then next I will clean my brush. I'm moving to green. Green shows up so nicely. I'm just trying to cover up all the white paper. And if you're using crayon, just keep doing circles with your green crayon. It still works just fine too if you want to work with crayon. Now I'm switching to blue. Okay, I'm going to be adding water a little bit because if it's too dry, the paint won't spread. So you have to kind of find just the right consistency or the right mixture of watercolor and water. Okay, now last, see how quickly we do this, is purple. Okay, getting a little more paint on my, a little more water. I'm dipping in the water as I go. Okay, there, I'm just about finished. Okay, so this is the paper that I said is going to get torn. Let me clean my brush. And then, so I'm gonna set this aside to dry, okay? And this is where you might have to put it down on the floor behind you or next to you. I would suggest, and I forgot to tell you all, to write your name on the back. So maybe if it's not too wet, you can turn it over and put your name on the back. At least do that sometime today before you finish art, because we're gonna use this paper again for part 2. So I'm just gonna set it down. And now I'm going to get the 2 smaller pieces. Okay, now this is where you need to decide if you want to make, let me show you examples, a rainbow or a tree. And these aren't finished, but if you're going to make a torn rainbow, it's going to be something like this. It's not finished. I haven't finished the blue and the purple. And if you want to make a torn paper tree, this is not finished either. It'll be something like this, okay? You can decide whichever one you want to do. I will start by demonstrating the rainbow first. So both of these are, you'll need the paper to be horizontal. Okay, now we know that we had 6 colors, okay, for the rainbow. So I'm just going to start at the bottom. And I'm going to draw a little curve like a rainbow. Okay, now that's just going to be open. So I'll do another curve. Okay, I hope you're able to see this with pencil. So I'm going to keep going until I have 6 sections. It's okay if it's not perfect, because remember, you're covering this with little pieces of torn paper. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's see if we say red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. All right. So what I'm going to do is you can decide if you want to add a blue sky first, maybe with your crayon. If you're using crayons, I'm just going to do a quick blue sky with watercolor. And it's okay if there's some white coming through it, because that could be like clouds. And usually when I do a sky, I like to do paint the strokes from side to side horizontally. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna put down some base color before we tear up paper, okay? So if you're using crayon, we're gonna start with red up here at the top. You can do crayon or paint. I just thought it would be nice to have some color in case we left spaces in between our torn paper. Okay, there's our red. And I'm just going to move through these. What's after red? Orange. And it's okay if the color kind of runs into the next one. It's actually pretty that way. There's the orange. Okay, what's next? Red, orange, yellow. And put some yellow on there. Because these colors will also guide you when you are gluing. A little more water. after yellow, red, orange, yellow. Clean your brush really well. Then we have green. Green. It's okay if it runs together. That's what watercolor does. And then blue. And finally, purple. Okay, now you can decide what you want to do with this section down here. You can leave it white. Let's see, I think I might add a little maybe gray down here, just so there's no white paper. Okay, and you'll want your name on the back of that. Now here's where you get to decide if you want to do a tree. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to demonstrate how we would do a tree. So you can't, I don't think you'll have time for both, but you might want to do one or the other. So with a tree, I'm just going to take my brown crayon and I'm going to just draw the trunk of a tree like this, just very basic. And maybe there's a branch that comes out this way. I'm going to keep it very simple. And maybe have another branch come up this way, because we're going to fill this with leaves, with torn paper leaves. And maybe we could have another branch come over here that splits off into another one. Just so it's a very simple outline of a tree. And you could even do like a little hole right here where a little owl or a squirrel would live. Okay. And I'm going to find my green and maybe put some grass down here. This is okay. And then I'm going to fill in. I'm going to start with the sky. And like I said before, when I paint a sky, I go side to side, more like horizontally. And it's okay to leave some white showing through because it could be wispy clouds. Because the main focus of this project is going to be the torn paper. And then what I'm going to do is as I bring the blue down closer to the bottom of the paper, I'm going to fade it out so it's not as blue. Let's see. Kind of drag it down here with just a little more water. And then let's do some blue over here. And this might not even show very much because we're going to be covering it with the rainbow leaves that we painted. Once it dries, watercolor dries a little lighter. And so now I'm just going to use water to kind of drag this down here. Okay, and then I am going to color in the outer trunk or bark of the tree. And you can do this with crayon if you don't have watercolor. I'm just going to go right over the little hole there. I might put torn paper over it too. And take it all the way down here. This brown paint gets a little thick compared to the other colors. Okay. And I'm going to clean my brush. So you should have either the base part of a rainbow, like the background of the rainbow, or you can have the background of a tree that you're going to cover with little torn paper leaves. And you should also have this paper, okay, that we will use. This is the one we will tear up, okay? So make sure you, before you put your things away, make sure you have your name on the back of the papers, because you'll need to get them out again when we meet again for part 2. So I know I went really fast. Some of you might need to take some time right now and finish coloring or painting. So you have some time to do that, but this is the end of part 1. So I will see you again for part 2. Okay, this is part 2 to our beginner lesson, which is rainbow with torn paper, or maybe you're going to decorate a tree with torn paper. So you're going to need glue sticks and maybe a paper towel or a napkin to wipe your fingers on, because they are going to get gluey, but that's okay. And then you need this paper that we did for part 1. Okay. So I'm going to start with the rainbow. So I'm going to set the tree aside up here, and I'm going to focus on the rainbow. Now, when I said torn paper, I wasn't kidding. We're going to actually start very carefully and tear these pieces, okay? And you might have to go slowly. It's okay if the colors overlap a little bit and don't tear perfectly. See how I'm doing little pieces at a time? I mean little tears at a time. For the most part, you should be able to kind of guide where your tear is going. So there we go. There's the red part that I've torn off. I'm going to set it aside, and it's going to curl up. That's just what happens because we're tearing it and we've painted on it. Now I'm tearing the orange. I'm able to look at my dividing lines here. There's the orange. Oops. It's okay if it tears into some of the other color, because you'll have control over it. There's my yellow. Try your best not to get paper all over the floor. And try to keep your little scraps in one area. But also everybody should help clean up at the end of this project. Like help your teacher at the end clean up because there's going to be a lot of little pieces. So everyone's going to have to be good helpers. And then we have the purple and blue. Okay. And if you're working on the tree, it's kind of going to be the same thing. I'll show you an example of the tree. So you don't have to wait. Okay, so I have all my scraps. Here's what the tree would end up looking like. You're just going to glue pieces all through here. And again, here's what the rainbow can look like. So I'm just going to show you how I do this. So usually I'm going to start with one color. You can choose whatever color you want to start with. I'll just start with red. So yes, you're going to have lots of scraps on your desk, but it's okay. So you're going to just tear pieces that are kind of like that big. So just tear a few to start with. Maybe tear off about 10 pieces. Don't tear too many because they might get blown onto the ground if somebody walks by, but I think 10 is a good number to have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just to start with. And your fingers are going to get messy. You can start wherever you want. I just put glue and stick it down. Glue and stick it down. You can make this as detailed as you want to. You can separate the pieces or you can overlap them. I would recommend starting by kind of separating them in case you run out of time. This could also be something that you finish up on your own time if you run out of class time. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue. Okay, and I'm gonna keep tearing. I'm gonna go back to my red, tear a few more pieces. This is not an exact science. This is just tearing, having fun. Just kind of see how it all turns out as you go. And yes, I said it, your fingers are going to get sticky. I'm just going right through here. I'm trying to stay kind of within the red lines. You see where our pattern shows up? Okay, so now I've gone pretty much all the way across. I'm going to do a little bit of overlapping with some pieces just to show you what it could look like. And it's okay if it goes above the rainbow line. I think it looks interesting. I'm going to keep tearing. See, you're not going to need my help for this whole project because I think you already know what to do, don't you? Just tear and glue. In a minute, I'm going to switch over to the tree and help those of you who are working on the tree with rainbow leaves. Notice how interesting it looks. I'm just adding more. I think it looks nice when the pieces overlap a little bit. Let me just finish the red section. You can make the pieces big or small. If you want to, later on, if you want to add some clouds in the sky, you could tear some paper clouds, or, ooh, we should have thought about having cotton balls. Maybe you can add those at home if you have some at home. Cotton balls make nice clouds for a project like this. Okay, so you see how I'm just adding layer upon layer. And I'll put one here. Okay, let me hold this up so you can see what it's starting to look like. See that? I like the pattern that we made on it. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside. If you're working on the rainbow, keep going. When you feel like you're ready to move to the next color, remember it's orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. You can do whatever you want down here. Okay, let me work a little bit on the tree. Okay, so I'm gonna just set the rainbow to the side. Okay, so with the tree, there's no order to the colors. I would start with maybe green and yellow because those will look nice against the blue sky. So again, I'm just gonna tear it. You can choose what size you want to tear your leaves. It's entirely up to you. So I think I'm doing these a little bit larger than what I'm doing on the rainbow, but again, this is your project. It's entirely up to you. And I'm gonna also I'm gonna tear some green at the same time because you can, like I said, there's no order to the colors. You can mix them. You want to mix them. Okay, so I'm just gonna fill in this area here. And they're gonna seem like they're kind of floating around, but that's okay. Because they'll get filled in a way where it'll make sense later that they're leaves. They don't all have to be touching the brown branches or trunk. They can just kind of be floating around. And you can put them over the top of the trunk. Okay. And again, my fingers are getting glue all over them, but that's okay. You don't want to keep washing your hands because then they're just going to get glue all over them again. You know, maybe a little paper towel at your desk would help. So far, look, I've only used green and yellow. You already get the idea that they're leaves. I'm just gonna keep filling them in and filling them in. Okay, that's just green and yellow. Now I'm gonna put some red in. So I'm gonna tear some red leaves, or red scraps of paper, any shape that you want. And the more you put on, you'll see, the better it'll start to look. You're just gonna fill this area. Yeah, I really do like the patterns that we drew. And it's okay if some of the tips, you know, stick up. This is, you know, we're doing art that has texture. Look already how the red is changing the project a little bit. Put some more red over here. Next, I haven't used orange. Just overlapping. You can overlap them and just keep filling it in. Let me find my orange. Okay, here's my orange. I'm glad we used some orange crayon over it because it makes the color stand out a little bit more. And again, I'm just gonna layer it right on top. There's no wrong way for either of these projects. I'm just filling in this whole space up here. with your leftover paper, maybe you want to tear a little circle for right there. Oh, purple. I haven't used purple yet. Remember, be a good helper, everybody, and help clean up extra scraps at the end of art today. Okay, I'm adding some purple now. Look, I'm just layering it right on top, but I'm keeping it like up in this area, so it looks like they're leaves on a tree. Purple's really pretty. You can go right over the top. Fill in, you know, where you see large blue spaces. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. I still have some more colors to add on there. I'm gonna go back to the rainbow for a little bit. And I'll put the tree up there. So the way that you put the other colors right next to it would be, you know, it's okay if they overlap a little bit. I'm gonna tear off some orange. So about, I don't know, about 10 or so pieces. Okay. It's sticking to my thumb because I have glue on my thumb. So remember, when I start the rainbow, I just do one at a time until I fill that row. And then I'll go back and put more orange pieces over the top. Please make sure that you have your names somewhere on your artwork. So again, when we tear paper and glue it, it's adding a texture to our art. Okay, see, I'm just going one by one along this row, and now I'll start layering more orange here. I'll just do a few more. Okay, see, that's how it's going to start looking. You just keep filling it in. Something like that. Has a very interesting look to it. Here's this other one that I was starting. I noticed I did not paint the sky for this one, so, but you can see more of the colors on there. Okay, so let me just work on this one. So keep working, if you're working on the tree, keep working on the tree. Keep putting those leaves on there. You'll notice there's less space because the arc of the rainbow is smaller, narrower. I'm just gonna put these on, working on blue. That way maybe we can see what a finished product looks like. See how if that one overlaps a little bit, it's okay. Okay. And I'm just going to fill in a little more of that blue. And here's where I'm going to start overlapping the pieces. It looks really nice once you start layering. And then let me add some purple. I hope you send me pictures of your artwork. I'd love to see how these come out. Sometimes it's hard because the paper will end up sticking to your fingers with all the glue. Sometimes that's helpful. Okay, you just add a little more purple. I'm layering it. There. So this rainbow, I would say, is just about complete. If you want to add anything in the sky, you can. I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to just finish a few more leaves on the tree. So I'm going to set this over here so you can still see it. And I'll just add a few more leaves. I don't have blue yet, so I'll put a few blue leaves on the tree. Spread them apart so they're in different areas of the tree. Look for open spaces. Maybe there's space there, up there. There's no wrong way to do this. That's why I like these art projects. Okay. Maybe I can tear a little something that would go right there. Maybe I'll use some green and try to tear like maybe a circle that will go there. Maybe that it's a squirrel's house. Like something right there. Why not? Or if you want to use black, you can use black. And you can even draw a little creature in there if you want to. Okay, so I'm sure that you're still working and that's okay. Here we did a torn paper rainbow and a torn paper tree, and just make sure you put your name on the back of your paper, and please be a good helper when it's time to clean up. But that is the end of this project, and I will see you next time. Thank you. See you next time.